Hey, it's Andrew at Melrose Mold Solutions.
Hey guys.
And I got Grace here, my wife. Oh my gosh, we had an amazing conversation just now that you're about to see. Over an hour long. We got into everything.
I like to talk.
Mention some of it?
Yeah, we talked about my health journey. So you guys know my husband Andrew from all the work he does on educating on the home and how to make sure you are living in a mold safe home. And my journey since we've been married really has been one of dealing with mold from a health perspective. And so this is actually the first time I have shared my story of dealing with mold as an athlete, dealing with it from a chronic illness perspective, dealing with it from a place of overcoming. How do you overcome and not let this run your life? So I shared all of that and more in our interview, and I am so excited for you guys to watch it.
Go watch it all the way through. The end is amazing and impactful. Subscribe, save, and we'll see you there.
Okay, so a lot's gone on the past 5 days, but over the past 5 weeks even, and got married a little over 5 years ago. So just tell me about really what happened when we first got married, health-wise, and then the exploration of mold and the realization of it.
Yeah, so we've been coming up on 6 years married, which is awesome. And I remember when we first got married, it was like my fullest intention that we were going to get married and that I was going to go back on the pro tennis tour. I'd taken like a break, as you know, for the couple years that we were dating, and right before we got married, I'd just taken a break from competing, and I was so excited to just get married and then like keep going after that dream that I've had for most of my life since I was a kid. And so I really distinctly remember this was probably like 4 months into marriage, right? So we're fresh, we were babies. And I went to train. I was like, I'm gonna start training. I set a date, I go in and I run like a couple of sprints on the treadmill. And from like all the workouts we do together, that's a very normal thing. I can knock those out easily, like every athlete can. And so I remember I got on the treadmill, ran a couple of sprints, and my heart rate went like through the roof. Like it was almost like dangerously high. I was like, what's going on? I must be out of shape. I remember I remember probably a couple of months where I was like trying to train. I'd get on the tennis court and I could like barely breathe. And I was like, this must be me. This must be my fault. I'm an athlete. I need to get stronger. I need to get better. And it wasn't until my dad, we were at home for Christmas.
Yes, that's what I was gonna mention.
I was literally doing like an at-home workout with him. I was doing air squats and I got so winded. And he was like, Grace, you need to get this checked out, right? So I was like, oh yeah, I guess I do. And that was really the time where I started kind of looking for answers. And then very shortly after that, I started meeting with doctors. That's a whole like thing we could get into, like even some of the doctors I went to go see at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically got a diagnosis for autoimmune thyroid, like I guess 6 months after we got married.
Yeah. That was crazy. And someone got you a Whoop strap.
Yes.
And you actually realized
my brother did.
how actually high your heart rate was.
Yes.
So it wasn't just that you felt out of shape, but now you had some numbers and it was like, oh, that's like, yeah, kind of dangerously high resting.
Yes.
About to sleep. I remember there was a lot now. Then the workouts, it would go 180, right? Or something like with not much, even close to 200 with not even much effort. So that's where like something else is happening. You're not just out of shape. So.
Oh, totally. Yeah. So when I really started realizing this was an issue, I had gotten a Whoop, and again, like so excited to just train and start tracking my performance. And instead of being able to go into this high performance season of life and training, it actually revealed the opposite. So my Whoop was showing that my resting heart rate was average 120 beats per minute, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And then when I would work out, it was I think it was higher than 180. I don't remember the exact number, but it was
Yeah, and all this is crazy because we like a big foundation of our even relationship is health.
Right.
So like we're not eating fast food every day, sitting around, not getting any sleep, drinking, all the lifestyle things, there could be like so many things happening in our body at that point that's just kind of trying to notify us via symptoms. But with you, it was like something more acute. You have a pretty healthy lifestyle overall. We're always learning something new, applying something new, and then this was a pretty extreme thing. So then that was about 5 years ago. And then what I would say from the home aspect is I was just getting in the mold industry at that time. It was really interesting timing how I had sold a previous business, started shadowing someone to do inspections, Tom Ray, doing inspections all around the Carolinas, and started to learn about the aspect of environmental health. And I was like, kind of a big light bulb moment for me. It's like, oh, like we do all these other health things, but the environment is usually left behind or not even taken into consideration at all. So I realized how big the industry was, but it was at that exact time.
Yep. I was getting sick.
Our apartment was bad at that point.
Yeah, but I was getting the exact moments that I was getting sick and diagnosed was the exact moments you were getting into this industry.
Right.
And yet it took me, and we'll talk about this probably later, but it took me literally the past 5 years of you being in the industry to finally realize, like, wait, I'm actually dealing with this.
For sure. And kind of a blind spot for me was how bad was that apartment that we first started in. So we only had a handful of months together in that apartment, but you were in there.
I was in there for almost a year.
Almost a year before. Yeah. So looking back at that apartment, the shower had a significant issue. We would sometimes get home and a really strong smell would hit us, and probably the HVAC system and the things I know about apartments. I think it just had some bigger issues. So your body was obviously responding to that, and it was very hard to know to what level of exposure, did we get there? Did you get for a longer period of time? Because these are all the nuances of, mold exposure that is very hard. Like how long you're in that environment, what types, what amounts, which ones are you sensitive to, the rest of your, terrain in your body. So tell me, I guess, about what you did for your health after that, because all that stuff happened, and then it was 5 years of like really doubling down on health stuff.
Yeah. So it was, really the first 5 years of our marriage were really challenging from a health perspective. Not only from the limitations I experienced of I can't do what I love, I can't actually move forward in my career, but then also the mental health aspect of going from this is where I thought I was going in life, and now I can't do it. So there was physical limitations, and then there was like this big mental switch up of, wait, not only can I not do what I love, and can I not progress my career because physically I can't do it, now what? Yeah. And so that was a really big moment, getting that diagnosis. And I'm the type of person that I'm pretty positive. I tend to have a really positive outlook on life. You know that from living with me.
You do.
So
very resilient.
It's really, nothing's really ever like a final statement for me. It's more just like, all right, what do we do now? So the diagnosis came, and it wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to do this again. It was, okay, what now? And how can I figure out what's going on in my body? How can I get to the root of this? And so I really began exploring everything. We met with a doctor that was in Charlotte. And the dude was, working with doctors was crazy, because I remember going in, I'm not going to say his name, but I remember going into his office. He was the first doctor I went to when I got this autoimmune thyroid diagnosis. And he was like, going through a list of what things could be, and you might have cancer, and this, and this. And then he proceeds to like try to get me to buy like $800 worth of supplements. And I go home and I'm like, what doctor like tells you that? You're like just starting to realize you have some symptoms. And by the way, you might have cancer and all this stuff. So it just didn't sit right with me working with him. I remember returning all of the supplements that I got from his office. I don't think I got a refund on everything, but I do think I got a refund on some. I was like, I don't want to work with somebody that makes me feel like that, or that so goes to the end. Like, let's discover what's making me feel this way instead of going to like worst case scenario.
Exactly.
So it was a journey finding someone to help me with my health. And I've always been somebody that, again, does kind of look through a root cause mindset, even without that education. I'm not a root cause practitioner. That's not what I do for a living or anything, but that's how I tend to think about things. Like, there's a reason this is going 100%. On. If we find the reason, we can attack it. So I started learning about root cause, right? Parasites, metals, mold, viruses. And I think it was really exciting to me at first, because it was like, oh my gosh, there is a reason that my body is responding this way. If we can deal with it, if we can handle it, I can get free of that. And so I did. I worked with, probably over the last 5 years, I worked with 4 or 5 different practitioners. Each of them were really helpful in giving me a piece of that healing. But it was layers. It really took years to kind of get my body to a point where... And
the heart rate did go down, which was great.
Calmed down, and I was able to actually start training again. So I'll touch on that. Like, the first thing I did that really helped my heart rate come down significantly, and that was the biggest symptom I'd experience was my heart rate. That was like the big indicator on, am I doing well or not, right? Autoimmune numbers aside, like that was the day-to-day symptom that I was like, oh, if my heart rate's coming down, I'm doing something that's working.
Right.
So the first thing I did where I saw major movement in that category was Cellcore's parasite cleanse. And I did that. I did the full moon cleanse probably 3 or 4 months in a row. And that was when my heart rate, my resting heart rate, started dropping down below 100.
Yeah.
My theory now on why that worked so well for me is that it was probably really helping my liver. I do think I had parasites, and I know in root cause, it's always like you go after parasites first and then everything else. So I still think it was proper and probably handled some parasites in my body. But I also think that all of the ingredients in all of those herbs and binders and everything, I really think they help the liver.
For sure.
And so I think it just lessens some of the burden of mold that I really didn't even know I was dealing with at the time. And probably did a couple things for my body. But that was probably the most significant jump that I made.
Yeah.
In my healing journey.
Yeah, you started sweating. We got an infrared sauna, a little sunlight and solo infrared. That was great. You know, we really implemented a lot of new habits. We got a red light panel at some point. I don't know when in the timeline it was. You know, a lot of good grounding and breath work and establishing like good habits, you know, health-wise. We started doing things for better sleep, you know, to enhance that, because that's, you know, how we're restoring things. You never stopped moving. You know, you had a lot of times where you were on the couch a lot, like with tiredness and things, but you always kept a really, really resilient mind. And I love that. Like your will was very strong to like, I'm gonna heal and there is a solution. And that's what we did together. Like that was always our mindset. We kept getting more and more healthy with the eating, you know, the 80-20 rule of like eating healthy 80% of the time was very locked in, maybe even more. And so, yeah, that was a big part of just strengthening the overall, you know, the body. So even from my perspective, I'm thinking you're doing everything you can and you're healing everything you can. And if something is held up, it's going to break loose at some point. A lot of prayer, a lot of, you know, believing, some fasting. I mean, we really implemented a lot. I don't know if you want to keep going on that topic with doctors and like as the memories are coming back of what else, you know, we did.
Well,
but
I'd like to go, and we're going to talk about mold like quite a bit, because that's been something that has recently come up as I look back.
Why we're doing this.
Oh my gosh, this is the thing, right? But before we get to that point, I do actually want to touch on purpose really quickly, because when I was going through that, did my faith waver like ever so slightly on, am I actually going to be able to reach where I want to go in life? Am I going to reach where I want to be able to go in my tennis career? Like all of those questions came up, but ultimately I didn't let them stop me, and I didn't allow myself to really get into despair. If I had a few days where it was really hard, I would feel it and I would move on quickly. I would get realigned, I would get refocused.
That's what I love about you.
I want to say, thank you, babe. So I want to say something about purpose, because now, obviously, I train 3-4 hours a day for my tennis. I'm getting ready to go back and compete in professional tournaments again. I am actually getting to live out what I want to do with my life, what I have felt has been my purpose since I was a little girl. I'm getting to do that after 5 years, right? And what was the thing that shifted me, other than the protocols and all of that? What was the thing that shifted me back into my purpose? Was, yes, I had done some of the physical healing and I felt so much better after that. Heart rate started dropping. But the thing that really helped me move forward and get back in this place was making a decision that my symptoms were not going to stop me. So even if I could only play tennis 30 minutes a day, I was going to do 30 minutes a day. I was going to walk by faith and not by sight. I don't know how people who don't have faith actually get through sickness.
That's right.
I think it's almost impossible to. You have to have faith. You have to have something that's bigger than you, that's driving you forward. Otherwise, the sickness becomes your purpose. And fortunately, my purpose in my life has been big enough where I didn't get stuck in 10 years of chronic illness.
Huge.
Doesn't mean that I'm not dealing with symptoms, as you know, but I was able to keep the purpose the main thing. Huge. So a big shift that went from starting to train, heart rate skyrocketing, kind of bedridden and couch-ridden for a few years. Yes, I would keep moving, but I couldn't sprint, I couldn't work out, I couldn't play tennis, to now training 4 hours a day. Yes, with certain protocols, but also was a decision of like, I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to move forward in faith.
Yes.
And every step I took forward, the next would open up.
That's right.
Instead of just waiting. So purpose has been a big part of me overcoming in this journey. So yeah, over the last 5 years, as much as I have tried different root cause protocols, I'd get a protocol assigned, I'd do that for a while. I'd experienced some success, but like ultimately still wasn't fully feeling like I was healing.
Yeah.
I think a huge reason for that was that I had not considered mold. And so I kind of wanted to shift into my recent epiphany and why we're doing this, why we're having this conversation, and really where I feel mold probably was at the crux of like a lot of stuff I've dealt with. Is it okay if we get into that a little bit?
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can go there now.
Okay.
So 5 years ago, definite exposure. To what degree, we don't know, but it definitely triggered a lot.
Yes.
But triggering can also mean that there was previous exposures or already some content in the body or some, so now the recent with connecting with childhood, what happened?
Yeah, for sure. So it's really interesting. I was reading a book recently by Dr. Neil Nathan that you had ordered called Toxic. And I was reading through it. And one of the things he says about diagnosing mold illness is he says the most important way, I'm paraphrasing obviously, but the most important way to determine if you have mold illness is to first consider that you might have mold illness.
Right.
And it was so funny to me to read that because back through the years, and when you get a diagnosis, the title of that feels so big that you're like, and the symptoms are so big, right? Like my heart rate is dangerously high. Everything's so big that when you start learning about root cause, you're like, oh, it's got to be this, it's got to be this, it's got to be this. You're looking for something to grab onto.
Right.
And I feel like one of the two mistakes that people make is they either stay scattered in like too many things, like
for sure.
I got to deal with parasites and heavy metals and all of that. And I definitely fell into that category for sure. It was like all of it. Or you assume it's something like huge that you're dealing with because your symptoms are so big, because the diagnosis title is so big, MS, whatever people deal with.
Go to worst case scenario.
You're like, well, something big must have had to happen. So for me, considering if what I had dealt with was mold was like not even a question for me.
Right.
It couldn't be that. How could a mold spore like actually affect my body like that?
Right.
So to me, I know a lot of people make mold this humongous thing, like it's the worst thing ever, whatever. For me, I'm like, there is no way that a couple mold spores that I breathe could give me a diagnosis like this or give me a fast heart rate like this. So I think a big stumbling block to my healing was that I didn't even consider it could be that. Now, some other people get stuck because they make mold too big.
Right.
It's way too big. It's bigger than them. For me, I'm like, no, I'm bigger than all this stuff. And if I'm sick, it's got to be this huge root cause. Like, I've got to be completely infested with parasites or this or this or this.
Yeah.
And mold was at like the bottom of the totem pole. Like, there's no way that could cause it. So for me, just asking the question recently, and I'll get to like how I discovered that, which we've talked about like many times. You're such a great listener and probably do for me what you do for so many of your clients. But it's really just the question of like, could mold be the root of this?
Right.
And my answer for a long time was there's no way. And now I'm realizing, wait, if I'm in a home and I'm breathing, I'm in there 12 hours a day and I'm breathing how many thousand gallons or liters?
Over 3,000 gallons,
Over 3,000 gallons of water a day, of air a day, over over 5 years, like that can be a huge, huge issue. So I had to look at mold as like, this is a much bigger thing.
Yeah.
And my real aha moment came when I was having some time with God, I was praying, and I had actually recently shifted my focus, Andrew, to my family. I got my mind off of myself. I would say that was a huge key to healing. I got my mind off of myself.
That is
and
huge.
I started looking at my family. I started praying for members in my family, my younger sister who had some things go on. I probably won't mention here, but she had some complications in her health. My younger brother who's dealt with chronic fatigue his whole life. My older sister, even my dad who passed away from pancreatic cancer, and we obviously know the connections between fungal pathogens and cancer. And then my mom, and I looked at my family, I was like, man, my whole family, like I wouldn't say we're really thriving in our health. And so I really started directing my prayers towards my family. God, let me be a solution for them. Show me what has gone on in their health. I want to be the one to go and help my family.
Yeah.
And I remember I was sitting up in our apartment and just praying. And I looked over at our bookshelf, and that book that you have had on our shelf since we got married, basically, by Dr. Jill Christ,
Break the Mold.
It was sitting there, and I really felt in my spirit pick that book up. I've never read it. It's been on our bookshelf for like 6 years. I pick it up, I start going through it, and I start going through the checklist at the beginning of the book that's like, check all your symptoms, blah, blah, blah. And I realized that probably 80% of the symptoms listed in there I had, or I noticed in my family. And I was like, this was my big aha moment. I was like, now I know what I've been dealing with literally since I was 7 years old.
And I knew, you know, we're together for these 5 years, so I knew mold had some effect on you, and I'm learning about it every day for 3-4 years, you know, every day, all day, and going all in on the health side and on the building side for my job. And I'm seeing a vast array of exposure here and bedridden over there, and then it leads to certain big diagnoses, and then other ones very minor and allergenic in nature, just kind of quicker things. And so I knew you were in that spectrum somewhere of mold exposure and of mold being a thing. But then even for me, I'm like, well, you're doing all these things that should be getting rid of mold. We didn't go huge on antifungals. We didn't focus all of our attention on just mold, but I didn't even consider that mold exposure was one of your biggest you know, pieces to the pie. And what I could do within my control was, let's live a really healthy lifestyle together, and you're not acting like every other person who's been impacted by mold and all the hundreds of clients I've dealt with. So I'm thinking, let's just, let's kind of handle everything, and that's good. But I think what we're about to embark on, more focusing on mold, is really huge, and we'll get to all that. But you know, throughout the process, I'm just saying, well, what I can do in my control is help and encourage you, get really strong together, and live a healthy lifestyle, and then get our house, our current house, in as best a condition as we can, a mold safe level. And after that apartment, we were out, you know, we were in a good spot. So
well, and we've done all the protocols, all the binders, all the things. We have them in our supplement cabinet, right? So we were doing them, and I was doing them. So it's like, what more can you do?
That's how
But if you miss and this is what I take ownership of. I'm like, duh, God gave me a husband who, right after we got married, got started in the mold industry. What am I missing that's right in front of me? Right? And I think a lot of people,
principle in life.
You help so many people who kind of already know this is an issue in my body. It's probably because of my home, and they're already there. But I think there's a whole, I mean, probably more people than even in the ones that you serve currently that have no clue.
That's right.
That their diagnosis has to do with mold. And that was totally me. It's like, it just complete, I don't know if it's cognitive dissonance or what, but I just totally could not see that, like, this is what I'm dealing with. So you getting in the industry was huge for so many different reasons. But ultimately, it's like God just put somebody in my life as my partner who is helping people with this stuff. And so, having that aha moment for me really helped, because I will tell you, I'm not going to say this is everybody's experience with root cause medicine, but, and I think I maybe mentioned this briefly earlier, but my issue when I met with root cause practitioners, again, was that there were so many potentials for what could be going on in my body based on what root cause medicine teaches. Parasites, viral, bacterial, mold, metals, all of this.
And there's all the pre-work before that, and the interactions.
And then it all takes time to work through. So you're almost dealing with so many like mental tabs open that could be the answer. And while those aren't wrong, it made my mind too busy with like, I've got to work through all of these things. Meanwhile, if you have a diagnosis, it's not to say that some of those toxic buckets aren't full or that you're dealing with that. But typically, there's one or two main reasons why you got sick, right? There's one or two main reasons. It's not like all of this stuff just went wrong. I mean, certainly they can all contribute, but if you really look at your body and your life and what you've gone through, it's typically one or two main things. And so we get too broad, which actually I think disempowers us from getting the solutions we need, because we've got so many different things that we've got to do. And I don't know that I would change anything looking back, because my journey is my journey, and I'm so thankful that I got to this place.
And you've learned a ton. We've learned a ton.
I've learned a ton, but if I could change one thing, I would maybe start dialing in and specializing and really starting to pray and ask the questions and get a little bit more narrow in my mind.
Yeah.
Take all this information about root cause and be like, okay, God, show me what is really going on inside my body.
Key.
I know that there's a root cause. I know that something's going on in my body that shouldn't be going on. Show me what the main thing is and narrow it down, because then I would have been like, okay, I can handle this. Mold, I can handle this. I can get that out of my body. And so I think that's one thing that that people who are working through root cause protocols can do, is they can close, if they can really pray and meditate and get still and ask God for help. I think that the many things could turn into one or two focus areas of like, no, we've been exposed to this. This is probably really where we need to focus primarily. And mine was mold. And so again, that aha moment of reading that book was huge. But the precursor to me getting that answer for myself was turning my attention and my focus from myself.
That's right.
Onto my family. And then not only did the answers start to come from my family, they started to come from me. And really that moment was, it's probably been 2 months or a little under 2 months since I opened that book and realized I have chronic mold exposure.
Right.
But it gave me so much peace and excitement, because if you have a diagnosis and you have something wrong with your body and you don't know what's going on, that is the most disempowering thing.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what is going on? My body's betraying me. Or then worse, you blame yourself and you're like, I did this to myself. I'm eating too many carbs. Which I've done all of that, and it's just not the case.
You try to throw the blame somewhere, and it's that can be a lot. The exposure 5 years ago in the apartment was a big one and a trigger. But this has caused us to dive even deeper into where was the heaviest exposure. Your body was changing, hormones were changing, new season of life with the family, and a massively moldy home that I've heard more about as time has gone on, that you were living in Maryland with the family, and a lot of things changed. So you can mention about that as well. And again, assumptions are not helpful. I assumed, it was probably a moldy environment. We all lived in one. I probably did as a kid. I think I definitely did as a kid. My parents brought in a mold dog to look around just because my immune system was shot. It's played a part. Let me just heal my body and get stronger. Well, with your house, you're talking about a moldy basement, and all the correlations of your family is really interesting. And not all my clients, it's that clear.
Right.
A lot of my clients, it's one or two of them, and the others are like, actually, no, we feel kind of fine. And that's also a different dynamic that's very nuanced. The fact that you and your pretty much whole family across the board all got radically different symptoms, but it was a shift in health. I think personally was a lot of environmental factors. I think mold and mycotoxins were a huge one, and how the body interprets that pathogen and then how the symptoms come out. That's what makes the list 50 symptoms long, because people's bodies are so bio-individual, and if the liver's down, then this causes. If the emotional state and mental and stress and sleep are down, then it'll go this way. So how this stuff causes symptoms is different. Maybe with what your dad went through, this was another burden on the body. With what your sister went through, another burden on the body. And so, yes, we're about to go into a huge, victory into your family with health because of this. But do you want to talk about even that house, a little bit of what you remember and what happened? Because that's a huge one to look back on.
For sure.
On this kind of, all these things happening together.
For sure. Well, opening the book and going through that checklist was a huge moment for me, for my family, and for myself. But yes, it made everything in retrospect make so much sense. This is why I had asthma in my teens. This is why I was constantly fatigued. This is why this. But the biggest thing that I remember from our family was I was 7 years old. We had just moved back from California into that home in Maryland. And it was a fixer-upper. We already knew that. But I've told you this before when we've talked about my childhood. We moved from California, which is like the sunshine state, or maybe that's Florida. But to me, California is the sunshine state. If you've lived there or visited there, it's beautiful, it's light,
that's what you remember.
It's always sunny. Yeah. I was so happy. And we moved to Maryland, and I remember it was like darkness. It was like this darkness. I don't know why I felt that way. That's just how I remembered it. And it was at that age where I went from this tiny, cute little 7-year-old kid, and I blew up. Like, literally, maybe we'll flash a picture. I blew up. I got so fat, And, my mom always assumed it was my diet, but it's like, that's not normal for your kid to just go from
And it
really
didn't change,
tiny
like,
to just blow up.
yeah, they didn't all of a sudden start feeding you bad. It was, your diet had been
Right.
not that great, but
Right,
the
right.
environment changed.
And another big indicator, right? I was 9 years old when I started my period, which is so early for a girl. I know that's getting more and more common, but again, common doesn't mean normal.
Or
And
good,
I remember feeling like it was not right that it started that early. Like it didn't feel right to me. But the more I've learned about how mold mimics estrogen in the body, how it impacts hormones, it makes so much sense that we moved into that home. My whole body got inflamed. It was already probably about to go through some hormonal changes, and the mold literally just kind of had that mimicry, and like my body just didn't do well. So that was a distinct moment I remember in my childhood where something went wrong, and ever since then, asthma in my teens. I would run,
that's a big one.
and I was playing high-level competitive tennis, so it's not like I was sitting on the couch. I would wheeze. I would just push through it.
Wow.
And so, to be honest with you, some people get a diagnosis of mold or they realize it and they feel so defeated. For me, and hopefully what some people take away from us talking is like, you should feel so excited that you are finally discovering. It doesn't
That's
matter
right.
what age. I mean, I'm 34 right now. I would have loved to discover this when I was 24. It would have felt a little bit better to know that I could knock something out. But oh my gosh, I'm 34 years old. I finally know what has plagued my body and my family since I was 7 years old. Like, to me, that's something worth celebrating.
Yeah,
because
for
if you
sure.
know the issue, you can fix it.
That's right. That's so good. That's really good. And it's, with me inspecting homes and consulting with people all around the country about the health of their home, I'm so curious about that house.
Yep, I am too.
Like,
I think we should do we've kind of talked about it, but
I think we should go back and go find that house, give them a free inspection. I think you mentioned do a video
think so
about
too.
it. And,
Wouldn't that
and
be
really
crazy
see,
if we could go back and inspect all the
maybe
homes
some's
that-
gotten better, but maybe some's gotten worse at that house. And either way, I'm just curious because that's pretty fascinating, that would happen. But a lot of people say that, like they have a big mold exposure when their body's changing, when they have, a close death in the family. Like a lot of things can kind of happen when the exposure happens. And it's just really interesting how our bodies kind of get down-regulated by a lot of different factors at once. Yours was just a big, change, and who knows. But it's just, health and biology is fascinating because it does integrate mental, emotional, relational stresses and the physical, health as well. And mold is a very complex thing, but getting kind of clear with it and saying we're going to target it. And so I don't know if you had something after that before, how that now relates to what we're about to embark on.
Yeah. So what we're about to embark on. And so, I kind of mentioned that I got really excited when I realized this was the issue. I've done a lot of research, as you have, and you've done so much education on the home. And by the way, really quick, I think we should talk about that because there is no getting well from this stuff if you're not able to figure out your home environment. So I have to give you big props for everything you've done. And I've heard the hundreds of consults and all the words and information you give to people.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is essential. Until we figure out actually how to build better homes that actually don't grow mold
and
in the first place, which is a much larger conversation. Until then, what you do is, really every single person who comes across this video and any of your stuff, every single person should get their home checked, period.
Yeah.
Whether they have had an issue in the past or not, whether they identify as someone in the chronic illness space or not, like it should be required because you just have no idea what living in mold can do until you know. And then it's it's more expensive and it's a longer process.
Yeah, and that's my main goal and mission is if we can empower the homeowners with some of this knowledge and education, literally light bulbs come on. Like I see it. They're like, oh yeah, that leak happened. Or, oh yeah, something did change when the HVAC system had this issue and that smell happened. Like they start making the correlation. So if I can get enough of that going out there, I always tell people if you watch my YouTube videos and Instagram stuff, you'll know more than 90% of homeowners just from that. And you'll be way ahead already. Just to consider it, like you said, and just to know the signs of what to look for. There's a lot of things homeowners can do for free that can really improve that. And that was a big thing for me is like, all right, what can I control with all the hardships I've seen you go through? We're gonna live a healthy life. I'm gonna pray for you, care for you, and be with you the whole time. And then I'm gonna make sure we got a mold safe home. So, I'm inspecting thoroughly, make sure that's all good, using my expertise that way. have the air purifier,
Yes.
the humidity in
Yes.
range. We do all the, keep the house really clean and do as good as we can there.
Yep.
Well, we've lived in mold safe houses, I would say, from my standards, really since that first apartment. Until recently, there's been a bit of a situation in our current place, and we are getting that handled and going to go on to the next place. But that is a huge part, because if your current house is the main place of exposure, your body's getting burdened, and it'll slow down the healing process and maybe won't even heal at all, because there's that kind of first threat at hand that's so heavy. So if we can get to that mold safe level, I say 80-90% as good as we can get it. Now the body is a little bit more relieved, and hopefully what we're doing for the body to heal it from the inside out and give it what it needs and all that is going to be working in tandem. That's why I work with practitioners in tandem. Heal the body, heal the home at the same time.
Yeah, so what I am doing right now, I just got 2 tests done. Just wanted to make sure that all of my inclinations on feeling like what I was dealing with was mold were correct. And so sure enough, got the urine analysis. I went ahead and got the blood serum analysis, the MyMycoLab one. Got both of those done. And of course, I would have been shocked if they came back low. Like, I was already at the point where I was like, my spirit knows what's going on.
Right.
So if they came back low, I would have been like, that's probably wrong. But they did. They came back high, which is what I expected. Aspergillus off the charts. And then obviously they list them a little bit different in the urine.
Couple of other ones, yeah.
One, but ochratoxin, all that stuff, definitely elevated. And so, yeah, I am really at the moment in time right now where I'm moving forward to work with a doctor. I'm not going to mention his name on here yet. I want to kind of let that be a part 2 of where I'm at, maybe a few months post working with this doctor. I really want to make sure I can get some good results before mentioning who they are. But I am getting ready to work with a doctor who very successfully has treated mycotoxin illness. This is not somebody that just picked up something a couple years ago and is trying to figure out just to help people. This is somebody who has dedicated their life to helping people with mycotoxin illness. And I am extremely hopeful. I'm going into this with a ton of faith that I will not be on root cause protocols for the rest of my life. I will probably manage certain things, especially knowing that fungal infections is a big deal, especially knowing now that parasites can contribute and all that stuff. I will probably be on different maintenance things in the future, but I will not be in root cause protocol healing for the rest of my life. My hope and my goal is to really 6 months out be completely clear. So I'll just mention really briefly, because my heart rate is a lot better now and pretty much healed, really the final things that I am working towards in my own health, 2 things. Number 1, I still need to really grow in my strength and endurance. I am training 4 hours a day for tennis, for competitive tennis, but I do feel at times like there's a little bit of a cap of what I can give in terms of strength output.
Cellular energy.
Yes, and I know more than I think. I know that getting rid of all fungal pathogens and infections is going to really allow me to increase my strength output, and my power output, and really help me to perform at a higher level. So that's number 1, is performance. The second is that I have always, and you've been so kind to me about this, because you're like, sweetheart, you're perfect, but I've always had a much bigger stomach than I should have for my size. And it's always been so confusing to me, because I've cut out bread completely. I've done all the protocols. I've done fasts, and it still comes back. And so what I have learned, and I don't even know if I'm going to say it perfectly for any experts that are watching this, they're like, she didn't use that terminology correctly. But what I have learned is that yes, mold can mimic estrogen in the body and different things. And so even though you don't have high hormones that give you that belly fat, your body can actually interpret it as that.
Right.
And so that's a really big aha moment for me to realize this is not my fault. I didn't do anything. In fact, I work out 4 hours a day. If anything, I should be.
Yeah. If anything, it's your fault that you're in good health, because you're doing all that.
Exactly. So really, I just want to make sure that my body is ready to perform at a professional level as a professional athlete. And I 100% believe I can get there. 100% believe that anybody who's dealt with mold illness can get their body not just back to what it was, but better. So really get the performance level back, and then I really am excited for what dealing with this infection is going to do to really just like de-bloat my stomach, And it's been so refreshing to realize that it's not my fault, and it wasn't something that I did to myself to just make that big. So those are the two main things I'm really hopeful for in my health, as well as getting energy back, getting some more energy back. So yeah, I'm going to be working with a doctor to go over my test results. He's going to put me on something specifically that I'm very excited about. That is supposed to be very effective at getting mold out of the body. And that's my goal, is that in 6 months, I mean, really at least 80% of this would be gone.
Yes.
So I'm very hopeful for that, and really hopeful for getting my family on some of this as well.
Yeah, awesome. And you have that resilient mind to do it, and it's going to work. And that will and intention from your spirit to work through your body is so powerful. And I'm very, very proud of you and how you walk through it, watching it firsthand. And I know it's not been easy at all, but how much we've learned, and how it's even brought us together. And many times it can move people apart depending on how they interpret it all. I'm very thankful for that. And what advice would you have for people? I guess one is, I don't even know if it could be mold. I'm in like the question, and those already who they definitely know it's mold. Like, so for those two people.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And you do kind of have to categorize yourself, because for me, I was in the category of there's no way it could be that. And I think a lot of people either just don't know how bad mold can be, or they just assume that it can't be linked with the label of their diagnosis. I would say exactly what Dr. Neil Nathan did. The first step to potentially kind of getting to the root of what you're going through is asking the question, could it be this?
Yeah.
Opening your mind to that, I think, is really powerful. So if someone doesn't know about mold, or doesn't think that that's an issue for them, but they have a long-standing chronic issue, the first step would be just asking the question and allowing yourself to consider, is this what I've gone through? And a lot of people have gone through immense hardship in mold, right? They've gone through the ringer, and I can relate, right? Because I did as well. But what they've done is they've made it so big. So on this side, you're making it too small. It can't be that. And when you've really gone through it and you know the toxic impacts of mold, I think a mistake is making it so big. It's bigger than you all of a sudden. It runs your life. And that's not a healthy place to be. It's not where people are going to be able to live out their purpose. It's not going to be where they're able to heal. It's not a healthy mindset anyway, right? Our bodies are powerful. They're made to heal. We're made to live out our purpose.
That's
God lives within us and is helping quicken our bodies.
That's right.
To life. And so I would say for these people, they need to maybe raise their awareness a bit more on mold, take it a little bit more seriously, balance things out a little bit. And on this side, for the people who know how toxic mold is, they've gotten their house checked 12 different times, they know that that's their main issue, but it's so big, it runs their life. They need to bring it down. They need to make themselves, remind themselves really that they're bigger than mold, right? That all of this stuff really is fixable. And that, yes, it does hurt your body. And yes, that does hurt, and process that, but to ultimately bring it down a little bit. And so we really just need a balanced perspective on it. Some people need to raise their awareness. Some people need to bring it down so they can live and they can get in their purpose. And I would say the final thing for my own journey is it has been hard, right? I'm the type of person that moves forward no matter what. But if I really look at, wow, that was so hard in my teen years to have so much fatigue. It was so hard in my 20s to deal with so much inflammation and not know why, and a different autoimmune diagnosis. It's been so hard to live my life with a stomach that's big and inflamed for no reason, no matter what I do. It's been hard to be out of my sport for 5 years and have to kind of sit on the couch and almost wonder, is my dream going to pass me by because of this? And so it is a big deal. But ultimately, I believe that we were made to overcome all things. We were made to put that under our feet.
That's right.
And it's meant to come underneath of us and not stay above us. And so I think that the awareness is such a powerful thing, because it's coming into the light and it's saying, now that we see you, now that we recognize you, you will not rule my life any longer. And I'm really excited to bring your community some practical steps for healing the body from mold. I really believe what I'm about to walk out in the next 3 to 6 months is going to be a solution for your community and for the people that have lost a lot like I have, but their story's not over and their bodies can get rid of mold. Maybe they just have been on the wrong protocols, or maybe they haven't been on the wrong protocols, but something new is going to work for them.
That's right.
And so it's being able to, no matter what you've gone through, like I went through my root cause protocols for 5 years, and some worked. They really did. Not everything though, but it's being able to hope again and say, no, this will not stay in my body. I'm going to live without this in my body. I'm going to move forward, and this is not going to hold me back, and it's not going to stay in my body. So having that hope to look beyond and say, maybe this time again, it's going to work. That's where I am. And that's what I hope to bring your community over the next 3 to 6 months.
And that's how we live. That's how we live.
Yes.
It comes to us to grow us and to transform us and to change us, for us to transcend and then give away. And you're all about that, is turning these pains and hardships into purposes, and purpose is often tied up in people. And so, you giving this away, and again, first seeing that I want to take ownership of my family and start praying for them and seeing them and embodying that, that's amazing. And then now even wanting to do that into the community of more people is awesome. And I will say, from my clients, those are the ones who get through it the best, are the ones who have turned it to, let me help the next person and turn it into that. Because if not, then they're just stuck kind of in the hamster wheel of trying to fix and get very, self-preserving, self-protecting, and that's a very tiring and stressful place to be. So we're made to give this away.
Yes.
That's amazing. With the home, the home is a big part. That's what my world's been. And I just really think that once we learn about the home and get those boxes checked, that's why I make all the content I do, and hope that, whoever can watch the Instagram videos and YouTube videos can really get all the nuances of those in the right direction there. Then it's about focusing on the body and applying everything that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
And then what we live by is really key. We live by faith, not by sight.
Yes.
We live knowing that faith without works is dead. So there is an aspect of physical health that's really huge. This body temple hosts the Spirit of God. And so the Spirit of God it quickens the body, like you said. It is coming and animating and charging our body with life, and is made to heal and come through. And so you and I live that way. Our family will always live that way, that what it says in Romans 5, that suffering produces something. It produces endurance.
Yes.
Endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And the hope that we have does not disappoint, because this hope is founded on the love of God that's been poured out into our hearts. So we're living from our heart space, not our head space that's always in survival, in that beta brainwave state of trying to fix everything and constantly problem solve. But we get back into the place of the heart, into the place of rest. And literally there's been dreams that we've been given. There's been little synchronicities or serendipities that happen. And it's just a process of learning God's voice through people, through things, that intuition, being guided, and not only living from the head, which is in the survival, feeling the body from the outside all the time, but getting back to the heart. And you've done that, we've both done that, and grown in that as more and more as time's gone on, and we want to more and more, because that's a place of peace. And anytime the diagnosis comes, or the symptom, or the article, or the scrolling and seeing all the stuff this can cause, anytime that produces a stressful response in us, that's not the fix.
Yes.
That's a heightened freak out, fight, flight, or freeze will be produced from that. And this solution is not going to be found in that. Those are all made to go on the shelf, in my opinion, be looked at, assessed, and then we choose.
Yes.
And again, you've done that. We stand by that and live by those principles. And what other thoughts do you have on that, or on kind of how our spiritual life has really been the place that has guided us through, how God specifically has, and any other additional thoughts?
Yeah, I think that our feelings lie to us, our fears lie to us.
That's right.
And we're in this constant battle of which voice to listen to. So for me, I recently was at a day of training that was really, really hard. I had trained about 5 hours a day in the Texas summer heat. All week, I think it was a Friday, I got home, I was so physically tired, and again, probably the mold deals with a part of the emotions as well, and so I was weepy, and I was tired. I think I had actually pushed my body a little bit too hard.
Yeah.
And I immediately go to Google, like, what does this mean? High emotional response, mold. Like, I literally was about to go to Google, and I heard God's voice, and he said, you're not gonna find what you're looking for there. And I stopped. And how many times do we do that, right? Dr. Google. I stopped, and I immediately was like, okay, I opened my Bible and I was like, speak to me. And I went to Psalm 84. I didn't know to look for that. I just said, God, speak. And I opened it up and I went to Psalm 84 and I'm reading through it. And there's a really powerful verse that says, when you pass through the valley of Baca, which is the valley of tears, right? And I was weepy. It says that it will turn into like springs of life or something like that.
Yeah.
So essentially the tears that I'm sowing
Yes.
will turn into life. It will sprout into something.
Yeah.
And then the next verse, it says that we go from strength to strength. And so the fear that comes up in me when I'm training and I feel a setback is, oh my gosh, I'm getting weaker. And I look and the word says, I'm like, no, God says over me that I am going from strength to strength.
That's right.
I am getting stronger. And another verse I love that has really spoken to me as an athlete at 34 years old is the verse that says, even youths will grow tired and weary, but they that wait upon the Lord will renew their strength. They will mount up on wings like eagles. They will walk and not get tired. They will run and not faint. And maybe I switched that last part around.
No, that's it.
But it almost actually gives a picture of young people that get tired.
Yeah.
They're going to get tired, but you will not.
Yeah.
You're going to only increase in
That's
strength.
right.
And so what society tries to tell us today is, the more you get older, the weaker you get. This happens, aging happens, toxicity, you have this chronic disease. And if you can look at it through God's eyes, it will always be hope. And that's a great thing that you mentioned. Like, can you look at life? If you notice yourself getting in fear, getting stressed, getting emotional, all of these things, you can trace that back to a belief that is probably not God's highest truth over you. If you are looking at life in hope, it's hard right now. It's hard to be 31 years old and feel like you might not actually realize your dream.
Yeah.
It's hard having a stomach issue that hasn't gone away pretty much most of my life. But when I feel that hope, that's when I know I'm in a place of God's possibility over my life.
Yes.
And while that may not to this point have produced perfection in my life fully, not all of my symptoms are gone, all of that, I would say it's produced really good fruit, and I know that more is coming for me. So we really need to have a watchful eye over our thoughts, over what is going on in here. And for me, the best place to do that is looking at God's truth, that higher truth that says, I am not getting older, I'm not getting sicker, I'm not getting any of these things. I'm going from strength to strength. And the ones who wait upon God for their healing are the ones who are going to mount up, and they're going to have glory on their lives. It says, the Lord God gives grace and he gives glory. No good thing does he withhold from those who walk uprightly. I am not perfect, but I've walked with God and I've walked uprightly. And he's going to give grace and glory over my life. He's going to give grace and glory over your life. And I think for anyone who has dealt with this, holding the seed of that hope, that they are so much more than what they've gone through. And again, for the people who maybe are finding your page for the first time and they don't know that they've dealt with mold exposure. They've not even connected the dots. This is a beautiful realization that once you know what is going on and you're like, oh my gosh, there is a reason that I have gone through all of these health issues. It's not a mystery. It's not something I've done to myself. It's not unfixable. There's a reason. Once you know the reason, there are things you can do to get mold out of your body, to get your home environment safe, and you can heal and thrive and have a purpose. And that's really my life mission. As I watch you help people with their homes, you're the voice of hope for people's homes, and really like such an educated, trusted resource that people can go to for that. And I want to be that pillar of hope for people's health, that they can get past this and just move forward. And this doesn't have to be a lifelong thing.
That is amazing. Amazing. So well said.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the mindset we have to stand on, is because the storms of life will come, and what we are founded on is going to be proven through the storms. If you're founded on a lie, that everything is really tough, that is the foundation that's gonna fail most likely in a storm. And your foundation has been strong, holding to this truth that you're going strength to strength. And if you face it and you're like, hey, I am going through weakness and I'm being really honest, there's also a verse for that. And that's a higher truth too, that in my weakness, that's where God's power is made perfect, right? So now your weakness becomes a magnet to draw upon him, not the sources or the, kind of temporary answers. And so his powers be made perfect in your weakness, and his grace is sufficient for you in this time. So a lot more we could go on, probably talking
Yes.
word
Part
and
2
truth
is coming
and prayer.
soon. So
Yeah.
when I get on this new protocol, start working with this doctor for everyone who's
Yes.
maybe interested in hearing about that. I'll do another interview with you then, and we'll just talk about my progress.
Yeah, awesome. Do you have any final thoughts or anything for this?
No, this has been awesome. Thanks for
Awesome.
having me on.
You're welcome. Love you a lot. This was amazing, and I look forward to your voice getting heard.
Thanks, babe.